Hello, everybody. This is Travis from Purple Phoenix Games, and I've got a special guest for you today. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? What would we know you from, and what are we going to talk about today?
Okay. Hi, I'm Alex Flagg. I'm one of the partners at Crafty Games. Um, at the company, I head up all the development, is particularly on our Mistborn line, and I've been doing design work and stuff like that in the RPG and board game industry for 18 years now.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah. Well, I haven't been in as long as my business partner, Pat.
Okay.
He's been at it since 1997, I think.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Cool. Okay. And the reason that we got hooked up was I was previewing a game for Crafty Games. Originally, I did to Donuts, which is fabulous. And then I was contacted about also looking at a game called Buru. So
hmm
that's kind of what we're chatting about here today as well. So do you want to go into any sort of detail on that?
Sure, yeah, happy to do so. Buru is our first, well, Dollars to Donuts was our first kind of like original IP game, and Buru is our second. It's our first Euro title that we've done, and so it's a light to midweight Euro game, set in the 14th century Majapahit Empire. So this was a massive Indonesian kingdom that arose in Southeast Asia. And in this game, you are playing diplomats that have come to this island called Buru, where you are trying to win over the islanders by paying esteem to their spirits and kind of bring them into the empire. This is all kind of in line with the history and stuff like that of
Mhm.
that kingdom. And so it's a game that features some bidding, some engine building, some resource collection, objective fulfillment stuff. It's a really highly interactive, very tactical Euro game, but that's also really kind of accessible to families and folks who might be looking for something that's beyond Catan or a
Mhm.
Carcassonne or something like that. So yeah, that's the very high level on the game.
Great. Yeah, and I agree definitely with it being more accessible for someone who's maybe trying to get into that style of game that doesn't want to hit the big guys right away. It'd be
Right.
great entry level, but still beyond that of, like you said, Catan or Ticket to Ride or something like that. So great.
Right.
So how did you guys get Buru? How did you pick it up? Like what's the story there?
So we do. It kind of all goes back to us having the Brandon Sanderson Mistborn license.
Hmm.
So the first board game we published was we've been making games in that space for 10 years now, and we had done the first board game version of the first Mistborn board game called Mistborn House War that we just kickstarted that, and we were at that Gen Con right after we had completed the campaign of 3 weeks before, and this new designer brought us this game called Buru. So Buru has always been called Buru, which
Oh, that's
a
good.
lot of games change quite a bit in development, but
Hmm.
he brought us this little game and set it up for us, and we just kind of sat in the back of one of the playtest halls and tried it out and like loved it immediately. And so we picked it up, we optioned it at that show, and we knew we knew all the things we didn't know about board games and board game development. And that was the very first title we got from an outside designer, and so we decided, heck with it, let's go ahead and do this. And so that's where kind of we began working on titles from folks outside the company.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So I know that Buru is taking place, like you said, 14th century Indonesian island that still exists today, I think.
Yeah. No, Buru
Um,
is a real place,
right.
and yeah.
Well, that's good. And that's one of the things that I kind of wanted to go over because, like, I read the rules, I read the credits. So I know that you have employed certain people that maybe not all designers or publishers do in order to kind of mitigate any sort of um, misinterpretation
Right.
of cultural issues. So you want to talk about that a little bit and why you
Yeah.
thought that
Yeah.
was important, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background, my educational background is in sociology, and the school I went to, Beloit College, was a big, it's a big anthropology department. That's kind of what the school's known for. So we have a lot of like cultural literacy and stuff like that. But we also get a real sense of like what you don't know. And a lot of sense that there's so much nuance that can be easily lost in interpretation. And so it's real important for us up front to kind of look at the context of the world. We made that decision during theming. There was a point about a year and a half ago before we had started illustration. What do we want the game's theme to be? We partially were attracted to the game because I've traveled to Southeast Asia, a number of times, and I really enjoy it. I just love that part of the world and the people there and the food, especially the food culture. Love all that stuff. So I was attracted to the game because of its theme, and so we didn't want to throw that out. But we also knew that the theme that we started with was not one that had any research behind it. So I went out there and I looked into it, and it's started doing my own research on, like, what do I know about Buru? What do I know about the time periods? What matches up with kind of the thematics and the visual we might want? Because I was really inspired. I always loved like Wayang Kulit, the shadow puppetry. They project a light behind, and they have these big epic stories that they that are very, it's a beautiful art form. And that was one thing I was really intrigued by. Is like, how can I mesh that together? But I knew that there's a lot of things I didn't know. And so what we did is, made an effort early on to figure out a time period we could line up with. And I kind of landed on this kind of golden age of Indonesia, which was right around this 14th century, which happened to be the first time that Buru is mentioned. It's called a place called Hitan Kadali, which I have not been able to find a proper translation for it, but I know I believe Kadali means forest, and so it's a forested island. So, but like the translations I've got is like easy forest. So again, you can't just rely on Wikipedia or Google to figure out these things. So I ended up turning around and going to look for folks in Indonesia, specifically who may have familiarity with. Well, I tried reaching out to museums. That was a no-go. I tried reaching out to local universities here in the States, and I never got any contacts back. I tried to find Southeast Asia programs, reach out to friends. They put me in touch with people. And then finally, I just went straight to Indonesia and looked for people who were familiar with board games, because a lot of people who were like, oh, I don't know what a game is, what work is this going to be. Having somebody who understands the industry and how much work needs to be done on a theme, and how important theme is and how central it is. Like, I'm not looking for an archaeologist to tell me about this stuff. And so we ended up meeting Chris and Kevin from Ketchup Games. And they came back and said, yeah, sure, we'd love to give you a sense of this. And so, we brought them in mainly for the kind of primary question we had for them is like, what feels Indonesian to you? The important thing that we learned very quickly is this period of time is very important for the modern Indonesian culture, not only because of the cultural things that came out of it, but for it's a real point of pride, So it's like, kind of think about how maybe Italians are proud of the Roman era and all the accomplishments of the Roman Empire. So it's a similar thing. And there's a whole preservation effort to save these kind of sandstone architectural ruins that are still there in like Troelon and a couple other places. So there's a huge effort to preserve and expand this culture, and it's kind of captured the imagination in the way that historical epics do around the world. So so we reached out to these folks, and they came on board and they helped us with the early theming, and they know all that nuance and context, It's and then we also brought in Angar. So Dan May, our graphic designer, knew Angar, and Angar is Indonesian, and he jumped at the chance to get involved in this. He really loved the idea of working the Majapahit era, and so he brought you've played the game, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so that all that beautiful illustration, that's all Angar. So okay. So like, and again, he had the idea. Well, some of the art, I really like the shadow puppets, but he's like, what would really work is there's all these friezes where everybody's kind of flattened out. They do all this stone bas relief stuff on these ruins, and that was a huge influence, and that came from Angar. And so we and he built that in, and that's why we have the people sitting and they kind of look like they're underneath like a glass plate. And so that's the wonderful thing about working with a team that has that sense of that innate understanding of the culture and stuff like that is that they're able to not only catch the mistakes but also bring an understanding of like what might be a better fit or things you never even thought of to the table. And so that's how it all came together. And I think that really that harmony is going to really be reflected in the final product.
Well, I'm glad that you said something about the final product, because that was one of my questions that I wanted to ask was, having played the prototype, and you get a sense of that art that you were talking about and the theming. But I wonder if you can maybe elaborate a little bit more as far as what might be different in the final product versus what I had a chance to play on the prototype.
Sure. Okay. And there are lots of different things we're going to be doing. So we're going to be running a Kickstarter campaign here in a few weeks, and we are really looking to make the final product as nice a physical artifact as possible. And so we have kind of two different tracks that we're going to be doing. The base game, we're going to be, throughout the campaign, we're going to be doing a lot more. So one of the key components is the explorer. It's the way you bid in. You have these little explorers and you put it into different regions of the board. And so we're going to take those from, in the prototype, they were just little round discs. They're going to become shaped heads with silk screening and color instead of just stickers applied to them. That's all we can manage. Yeah, so that'll be nice. Those the totems that represent the different spirits of the island that you're paying tribute to, those are going to be nice wood pieces instead of like 3D printed. And they'll be they'll probably maybe even a little bit larger. We're going to see how we do.
Really, those were big to begin with.
They were pretty big, yeah. Like we're figuring out what those will be, but they're going to be nice big hunks of wood. We might be looking at maybe adding some silk screening to them or something like that. The wood tokens and the deluxe edition will have silk screening as well, so they'll have the palm will have like a vein to make it look more like a leaf and stuff like that. We want to add some different colors to the Explorer tokens as well. And then we're also going to have a day one expansion. So we have the Ambelau expansion, and that adds another region. But there's quite a bit of other game content we've developed alongside the base. So it doesn't need to be in the base game, and we didn't want to bloat the game or make it overly complicated, but it will kind of really add to the experience. A fifth player, a new region, and we have some other kind of fun content that wasn't even in the prototype you saw, like asymmetrical player starts and powers, and also the solo mode, which you haven't had a chance to see. There'll be a solo mode both in the base game and one for Ambelau. So I'm just finishing it off right now.
Wow, that's a lot more than I was expecting you to say, because it was already a really great production, just that prototype version that I had a chance to play. I was really impressed with that, and like how you guys were able to put everything together. And even something that I think a lot of other publishers might want to jump on as well, that I noticed, is each little component had its own baggie, and each baggie was labeled with what needs to be in that baggie. And like, now I'm a little OCD myself about my games, but like I never really have done that, and now I'm going to start doing that to all my games. Is because putting that stuff back together sometimes is a game in itself. So that was really appreciated and loved it.
Well, the baggie, that was me for that was my particular obsession for reviewers, because I know that you tear apart a game, you're not familiar with it, where does everything go,
Right.
And so I wanted to go through and label, and I put pictures on everything, so you just know, okay, I can tuck this away, and knew what part was Ambelau material and which was base game material. But you won't have those baggies in the final game, because the deluxe edition will have a game trays insert.
Ooh.
So yeah, they're working on it now. I know. I'm really excited about that. I love. I'm a like, I get those little bits trays all the time, and the metal coins. I love to bling out games. So I'm really excited to be working with game trays on this, and they're stoked. They've got a lot of ideas, and so we want something that's actually going to be not only functional, but something that's reflective of the game itself. So something that has the themes. Like some of the decoration and art, like, will inform how that tray comes together. So we're kind of, it's they're working on it now. So I haven't seen the first drafts, but we know they'll do a great job.
Yeah, I mean, everything else they've produced has been great. Oh, that's excellent. I'm really excited about it because it really is at its core a really great game, whether or not it's blamed out. But like you said, if you can get that deluxe version, I think it's going to be a great little addition to anyone's collection, really.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I have one last question, but it doesn't have anything to do with the game. Are you ready?
Okay.
It's more it's more about like I'm kind of a nerd in terms of I like logos and that sort of thing. And so I don't know if you have any insight as to the story about Crafty Games and its logo.
Crafty Games logo. Yeah, Buru's logo was an interesting one too. So
I'll take both.
Oh no, so Crafty Games logo is actually pretty simple. So we were starting out in 2005 because we used to work on Spycraft. So that was how I met Patrick. I was a freelancer on Spycraft, and we worked together for a number of years before AEG cut the line loose and we licensed it for them and went out on our own. And so we had been doing spy games, and that was kind of our thing. And we were going back and forth with like what should we call this company? And our third partner is no longer with us. Was like he came up with the idea of Crafty, and because we had Spycraft, and so we kind of like attached ourselves to that. And but we wanted to feel so. We had a word mark on Spycraft 2.0 in particular. I think maybe even used the same font, had that big chunky, not Simian, Simian's the body font. Anyway, it was some big cartoony comic booky style font. And so we're like, well, we need to indicate the spy stuff, but we want to lash ourselves to spies forever because maybe we'll do something other than spy-based role-playing games, as it turned out. It's exactly what we did a couple of years later. And so we just took that. So we had Steve Huff, who was the graphic designer at Alderac. He had also left, and so he came in to design it for us. And then he came up with the idea of the dude in the A. So and so that rumpled looking spy with his hands shoved in his pockets like Lemus from The Spy Who Came Out of the Cold was kind of the influence there. And that's the story of our logo.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said you had something about Buru too.
So Buru, yeah. So Buru has an unusual logo. If you look at the box, it's symmetrical. It's this 8-pointed mandala, which is an Indonesian kind of national symbol. And so we wanted the box, and so Dan was playing with the idea of having the box be viewable from any angle. You could just pivot it, and the art in the frame would change, but it would be symmetrical. And so the first version of that logo, it was viewable from 4 angles. It was a square. So the U of Buru, the last U, connected to the first loop of the B, and it was pretty hard to read. It looked more like it was a piece of art. It was gorgeous. And he's in a graphic design collective with some other guys like Quan Chai and some other big name artists and illustrators in the game industry. And they were like, oh, I love it. It's so cool. But everybody read it, and it was tough to like light correctly. We wanted you needed to show like which way is up kind of. And so how do you do those blends when there's no ending and no beginning? You've got this kind of Mobius strip of logo, and so we knocked it down to 2, so it's mirrored. We have the kind of up and down version that you can have, and it's much easier to read like the individual words. But yeah, that was just Dan going nuts, full artist, and so it was fun. Like we really liked that. It's gorgeous. We like the 4-sided version, but it was just so hard to like put in formats. We had to come down to something we could show just a single word or the double word or whatever. So
yeah, I really like the way the game looks, the logo, the box, everything. It looks great. So
thank you.
I'm hoping everybody else does too. Okay, do you have any last thoughts or anything you want to talk about that's coming down the pipeline for you guys?
No, I mean, for folks, I'd mentioned that we do the Mistborn stuff, and I know that there's a lot of folks out there that are excited. Well, we've just kind of had the giant COVID-19 logjam is broken loose, and so right now, if folks are excited to try out something in the more immediate future, we've got the Mistborn dice sets have just dropped. So we have acrylic sets of all the different metals and magic for the different magic styles, as well as the metal dice sets. Those are going to be available here in just a couple weeks for order. And we also dropped the first expansion for the Mistborn House War board game, the Siege of Lutherdale. So that was it was a very long development story, but we're really excited because that was a huge effort to get that done. So that's coming out into stores right now. So, and Dollars to Donuts should be out later this year.
Great. Excellent. Well, if anybody has any questions or anything, how can they get a hold of you or someone?
Yeah, if you want to learn about us, it's crafty-games.com. If you want to learn more about Buru, it's Buru Game. That's BURU game.com. And we're going to have a sign up page very soon with a preview of the game. And folks who sign up to the newsletter will get access to a tabletop simulator mod so they can try it out immediately.
Great. Awesome. Well, I thank you very, very much, Alex. It's been great talking to you, and get out there and check out the Kickstarter that's coming out soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Travis.
All right. Have a good one.